All right, welcome. Hi, everybody. So, welcome back to our FreeBSD training and education course. But we're going to do something just a little bit different. Uh, we have been going through all the aspects of setting up a copy of FreeBSD and running that local to your machine. But if you were not aware, there's actually a service, and it's called Super Dimension Fortress, or SDF. And yes, it is named after the anime. Uh, the inspiration comes from the fact that the SDF public access Unix systems was originally built as a bulletin board system for anime fans. And as that grew and the project grew, they ended up turning the name into SDF for the project itself, and now you can go out and you can get a Unix based shell access to their system for free. Now, is there any catch? Not really. There's a lot of really cool things that you can do with SDF as well. But I want to go over the history of SDF just a little bit deeper, just on account of the fact that I think this will help you better understand some of the ways that Linux and Unix differ from each other. And I know you're thinking to yourself, okay, well, we've been talking about FreeBSD, and SDF is based off of NetBSD, which is also a Unix operating system. So how's that going to teach me about Linux? Bear with me here as we get to those points. So I have already set up my account at SDF. If you go here to sdf.org, which link will be in the description, you can come here and you can click to create your own free shell account. And then once you do so, you'll put in your email and your preferred login. Preferred login needs to be all lowercase. And you'll hit confirm. They'll send you an email, and then you will be able to get access to the system. Once you do so, be smart. Do what I did. Set yourself up so that you can log in using SSH keys. It works just like your FreeBSD system. So if you remember early on in our series, we went in there and we created some SSH keys, and then we added those SSH keys into the authorized keys, and now we can just log in passwordless. You can set that up here at SDF. And so I typed in SSH SDF, and if you take a look here, you'll see we're actually logging in on their 35th birthday. So they have been around for 35 years. They started in 1987 and they are still going strong. It's 2022 and you can still get accounts. I absolutely love SDF. And it's very funny. I was in one of the chats when I first joined and I was talking about who I am to somebody else, and I just kind of casually mentioned where I work and some of the stuff that I do for a living. And that person was incredibly hostile to me, but in a very funny way. And I think we both just kind of laughed it off and just went back to our day. It seemed like that person wasn't a big fan of anybody who works in like military, government, or police. And I thought that was very almost kind of humorous in a way. Since then, I really haven't had any issues or problems with anybody. I like the SDF system. Uh, Everything's kind of neat, and we'll go over some of the stuff that you can do with SDF. If you take a look here, this is part of their MOTD, which is Message of the Day. You can actually post to their guest book, and then those guest book posts will show up here. And they have 7,249 guest book entries right now. And it says, welcome to the SDF Public Access Unix System, established in 1987. And then you have a bunch of commands that you can actually run. So you can type in help for a quick help. You can type in FAQ or FAQ, Foxtrot Alpha Quebec, for detailed questions and answers. If you want to take a look at their discussion board and make software requests, you can do so by typing in bboard. So Bravo, Bravo, Oscar, Alpha, Romeo, Delta. That'll actually log you into their bulletin board. If you want an interactive discussion, you can type COM, Charlie, Oscar, Mike. If you want to set up your homepage, you can do so. And if you want to create a URL for your homepage, you can do that as well. And there is actually a wiki, which I'm just going to open very quickly, full screen. You can take a look at the wiki here. Everything that you can do with your SDF account is here, and there is tons of stuff that you could probably do with your SDF account that other people have not even thought about doing yet. And again, it's all free, which is super awesome. So if you ever wanted to set up a Gopher site, a Gemini site, or a website on the World Wide Web, and you didn't want to have to host it yourself or pay money for it, you can absolutely do that through the SDF. In addition to that, there are some things that you may have to pay for. I think voice over IP is one of those services that you don't get access to voice over IP unless you pay them. But the costs are incredibly reasonable. They've been around for 30 something years, and in my opinion, it is worthwhile supporting these folks if you're going to pay a little bit of money to get access to some of the more advanced items. And it's also interesting to note that within the educational community, I have mentioned sdf.org to other instructors at other colleges whenever I'm having meetings with some of these folks, and many of them know what I'm talking about and have either had an account, have an active account, or at one point used it at some point in their career. So there's tons of educational members who are going to use SDF. There's tons of people that you're going to run into that support SDF. And if you've never heard of SDF, well, that's a crying shame, but now you get this opportunity to actually see what I'm talking about here. So I'm going to make that small here for a second, and we will go back here. So the first thing that I want to do is let's figure out what is the operating system being run by the SDF. And the easiest way to do that is to use the command that we have used previously, which is uname. So that's uniform, November, Alpha, Mike, Echo. Uname, hit space, dash, and then we're going to type A as in alpha in lowercase and hit enter. And so now we can see that they are using NetBSD 8.2 and on an AMD 64 system. Okay. The latest version of NetBSD is 9.1, I want to say, maybe. We can actually find out. NetBSD, latest version. Let's find out real quick. 9.2, so I was off by a single point version. So we're behind about a single version here. Not a terrible big deal, but at some point, undoubtedly, they will go in and they will make those updates. So the next thing that we want to figure out is, well, what shell are we using, and how would we do that? Well, there's a few ways, but the easiest way is, let's just check the shell variable, right? So echo, $, shell, all uppercase. So that's Sierra Hotel Echo Lima Lima, and hit enter, and we can see bin KSH. So we've been using fish or bash, depending on how you've been following along with this, and now we're using KSH. I think we've also used CSH for a short while. It's just another shell. Don't be intimidated by it. For the most part, it's going to do exactly what you want. You can always type man KSH, and we can see this is the corn shell, and here within the manual, so that's Mike Alpha November. Right here, KSH, public domain, corn shell, and then you can see a whole bunch of other information here, all about what you can do with this tool. And there is a ton of information about how to use your shell. I'm going to hit Q just to get out of that for right now. Clear my screen. I think htop cannot be run, so you can't run htop here. Can we run top? You can run top, and what is interesting is you can actually see some of the things that the users are doing. So if you wanted to know what are people working with, we can actually see a bunch of users who are using tmux right now. We can see a user named Phoenix who's using WeChat. A whole bunch of people have IRSSI open, which is similar to WeChat, and it's just another tool that we can use in order to gain access to IRC. So people are working on this system right now. This is a shared Unix system with a whole bunch of us all connected to it at the exact same time. There's over 688 processes that are running on this thing right now. I absolutely love the fact that you have to use this system in the same manner that you would have used a a shared Unix system 25 years ago. If you were a college student and you were going to school somewhere and you wanted to gain access to a computer, this is a very similar um, experience in terms of a whole bunch of people all connecting to one system, and then you not having sudo rights. You don't have the ability to install software or anything like that, and you got to kind of work within that ecosystem. So I really and truly do believe that this is a fantastic way for you to start that process of learning how to use these tools, especially if you're on a system that perhaps you're not going to be able to use something like VirtualBox, right? So if you are in a position where VirtualBox is not available to you, or your computer's not strong enough to do that, or whatever, you still have a tool here that you can go through and you can start that process of teaching yourself how to use Unix, which then is also applicable when you want to start using Linux. So stepping way back in time when I said I wanted to talk a little bit about the history. So SDF actually used to run on Linux machines, but they were under constant and continuous attack. Tons of people always trying to attack the system, trying to break it, trying to prevent people from being able to use it, and just otherwise trying to make it a not fun time. So at one point, they made the conscious decision to go in and they were going to completely sunset their Linux box, switch over to using NetBSD, and they haven't looked back since. And that has helped them tremendously with solving a lot of their security issues and with getting the system set up so that they could continue to offer a service like SDF. I absolutely love the story, and I love the idea that you have this shared system that anybody can kind of log into and use and work together in an environment where your skills as a administrator, a developer, or even just an end user can help you be a good neighbor, to work in that environment and to be able to learn what it's like to be on a system that you have to share resources on. So we know what operating system we're using. We know what shell we're using. So how many people are connected to this box? Well, the first thing you could potentially do is you could type help. And if we typed help, it's actually going to give us a list of information here. And we could see directory and file utilities, email information, Usenet information, and then we see user and process information, right? I'm just going to hit Q because I already know I can type who. And upon typing who, I can see all of the users here, right? And there is a user, and that user is MRN, and they are on PTS1, so they are probably a pretty important person. I'm going to type finger MRN real quick and see if that works. And it does, and we can see his name is Abner Doubleday. He is using the KSH shell. He has been logged in since June 15th, 2302 on PTS1. He's been idle, and he last read his mail on July 6th at about 1:36-ish UTC, right? And we can see where his directory is and so on and so forth. I could do the same thing, finger, let's say Suzuki. And we can see this individual's name is Daisuke Suzuki. We can see shell. This person has switched to bash. You can actually type bash. That switches you over to bash. We can echo $shell, hit enter. This will still show the shell is listed as KSH, but I think that's neat. And then I can back out of that, and I'm right back to where I was. So now we know who the users are, and I give you a little extra bonus there. You can use the command finger in order to figure out people's names and additional information about those users and things like that. If I type who am I can see my name. I can do the command on myself, hit enter, and you can see that it lists my name as Aaron. I'm listed as having never logged in, which is obviously not true. I've logged in multiple times. It just so happens that I haven't been logged in enough for that information to update here. So now that we have done that, the next thing that I want to talk about is, let's talk about licensing. Oof. That doesn't sound fun, right? But it's important. And it is incredibly important because your choice of license is going to assist you in making a decision on what you can do with your system. FreeBSD is very famous. Unix in general is very famous in that the licensing structure is incredibly permissive in terms of what you can do to make money with it. So if you take a look at Mac OS, Mac OS is actually built off of Unix. And what they did was they went in and they effectively forked a copy of Unix, and then they started developing that copy of Mac OS to meet the needs of their user base, and now they include that operating system up to and to the point where their licensing system actually states that you cannot install their operating system on hardware that is not official hardware by Apple. But most people ignore that and they create Hackintoshes, and there's a whole bunch of stuff that goes along with that environment. But macOS wouldn't exist without the tools that were laid down by FreeBSD and others, and FreeBSD doesn't get a dime. Out of all of that money that Apple is making thanks to FreeBSD, FreeBSD isn't receiving any cash from them because of the way that the licensing is built. Um, and then we can see here, so FreeBSD license. I'm just going to pull this up real quick. We can see the FreeBSD copyright, and they have tons of information and there's tons of arguments here. And at some point, somebody's going to get in here and start quoting Richard Stallman, and there's going to be just all kinds of stuff that happens when we start talking about licenses. But we can see NetBSD license, we can see licensing and redistribution, and they have a 2-clause Berkeley style license. And it says if you write code and assign the copyright to TNF, this is the license that will be used. TNF being the NetBSD Foundation, and redistribution of source code must retain the above copyright notice, this list of conditions, and the following disclaimer. Okay, and then redistribution in binary form must reproduce the above copyright notice, this list of conditions, and the following disclaimer, etc., etc. So, does it matter to you as a home user? It depends. If you own a business or you're a small business owner or something like that, you might be concerned about whether or not you can use or do something with a specific license. If we take a look at the Ubuntu license, we can come here and we can click and we can start taking a look at some of the explanations that the folks at Ubuntu have. And all of them are fairly permissive. They are fairly permissive. What you can't do is kind of a rule of thumb here is go out and download a copy of Ubuntu, take the name Ubuntu off, and then go sell it as a brand new operating system and try to tell everybody that you invented this OS and it's just a copy of Ubuntu. Right? You can't do that. But what you can do is you can go out and you can take a copy of Ubuntu and you can install it on a computer, and then you can sell a service contract. And you can say, hey, as long as you own this computer for $100 a month or whatever, I will help you with 3 issues related to your computer, or et cetera, et cetera. However you want to do it, it doesn't matter. This is just make believe. But the idea being, if you are using Ubuntu, you can sell service contracts, or if you're using any kind of Linux operating system, that is a way that you can potentially make money. All of these tools are under what is called open source. So if we type open source and we come here, there's an actual open source initiative. And the way that open source works is you have a whole bunch of different licenses that set the ground rules for what can or cannot be done. You can see here BSD 2-clause simplified or FreeBSD license. You click here. This is your actual license. Everything right here. And then you can actually go here and you can get additional assistance related to those community licenses. There's even a way to choose a license. And so you can come here to choose a license, and it's kind of like a choose your own adventure, right? I want it simple and permissive. I click here. Oh, MIT license. Limitations: liability, warranty. Conditions: license and copyright notice. Permissions: commercial use, distribution, modification, private use. All of that is covered here. You probably need to be a lawyer if you're going to worry about licensing. That that really is important whenever you start going into working at businesses. There's incredibly famous stories about companies like AT&T and T and other very large technology companies who have gotten into massive lawsuits based off of what is and is not permissive within their licensing. In addition to that, you also have to worry about what are called copyright trolls. You could create something, build something, and then try to sell it, and then somebody will come in and state that they own a copyright that's kind of vaguely related to whatever it is that you're doing, and then they demand X amount of money, and they sue you in a Texas court. That's outside of the scope of what we're doing here, but it's something to keep in mind for the future, especially if you go out to a business and somebody says, "Hey, I want to use this operating system or I want to build something." That is the time to go out and you find yourself a copyright lawyer, or you work with an individual at the Free Software Foundation or something like that, and then that allows you to start that process and plan of how do I build something so I don't get myself in trouble. So what about cost? What does any of this stuff cost? Really? Nothing. But so here's the argument to this. Somebody is going to tell you, and there will be the argument that is presented, well, if I use Windows, I have paid for them to handle everything for me, and that saves me time. Maybe. If you use Linux, their argument is you're paying in the time and configuration and building what you need to build, and etc., etc. You will pay an extraordinarily large amount of money in licensing fees and in purchasing software contracts on a Windows-based machine. But the flip side to that is I save a tremendous amount of money in just licensing fees by being good at using my computer and setting up items using tools like Amazon AWS. So I can go to Amazon AWS and I can spin up a Linux-based computer, which costs me less money than a Microsoft Windows-based server, and I can set up something like a web server and do it securely and run that very easily. And so what I would say is if you invest in yourself, if you have an investment in your people or in yourself, if you're a manager, you're investing in your people, right? If you invest in your people, you can offset the costs of what it would require for you to go out and pay to have a system that is set up through Microsoft by using open source software. But if you do not have a good team, or your team does not know what they are doing, or they are a Windows only shop, obviously you have to stay within Microsoft, and now you are paying for Windows developers, Microsoft familiar system administrators, whatever, and you're paying for the licenses. But all of that is going to come down to who's your user base and who are the people who are going to be setting up your systems. I will also state there is absolutely no supercomputer in the world today that is running Microsoft Windows. Doesn't exist. They are all Unix or Linux-based systems. Any system that is being used to host the world's largest websites, I don't think any of them are running Microsoft Windows. Your world's largest websites are going to be run off of Unix or Linux-based systems, and they're using tools like Nginx, and they're using load balancing, or potentially a few of them are using Apache, but for the most part, everybody's kind of moved over to Nginx. It is when you get into high-end computing or large companies or anything like that, you're looking at needing to use Unix, Linux. You have to use open source software, and you're going to be working on projects that are incredibly interesting. I feel that small to mid-range shops that cannot afford the individuals who can work on Unix or Linux. Those are the folks that you're going to run into who are going to be looking to hire for Windows. And then when you start getting to hundreds of millions of users, a billion users, whatever it is that you have to deal with whenever you're using a Facebook-sized set of systems, that's you're not going to see a whole lot of Windows computers running at scale at that size. So cost wise, if you invest in yourself, you will find and discover that Ubuntu Linux or FreeBSD or Arch or any of these tools, they will pay dividends for both yourself and your company or whoever it is that you are working for. And if I needed to build a web server, so one of the questions that I want to ask you is, would you rather use Unix or GNU Linux to do it? If I was building a web server, I would most likely use a tool like Ubuntu Linux. I like Ubuntu Linux for web servers. And I say this because I can very quickly use my Ansible scripts to stand up a whole bunch of Ubuntu web servers, and I can do all of that under Amazon AWS, and I can do it for very, very cheap. Whereas trying to deal with something like NetBSD or FreeBSD, which don't really have as good support on AWS right now, it's not really worth my time. Now, there are companies that you can go to that will provide you a virtual private server that is Unix based. We're logged into one right now, right? Uname, Switch A, NetBSD. I'm in a NetBSD system located somewhere here within the United States. Those systems exist. They 100% do. But AWS, while you can install NetBSD and you can install FreeBSD, the support for the tools at AWS is not yet there. And so I cannot recommend these systems as the system of choice for cloud computing. I'm just not there. And if you take a look at what SDF is doing, they're running their own hardware. They're not in the cloud. They haven't moved everything to AWS. They're running servers in a rack located in a room somewhere. And so that's where you end up with something like this. So HELP, which is Hotel Echo Lima Papa, hit enter. That's going to be where you start. You have your SDF help system. In addition, you can type in Foxtrot Alpha Quebec, hit enter, and now you have the frequently asked questions where you can come in here and you can type in something like Gopher, hit enter. Command go to Gopher, hit enter, and then it asks what is Gopher and Gopher Space, how can I set up my Gopher Space, go to 02, hit enter, go to 2, well, and so go to Gopher, type 2. There we go. So how do I set up my Gopher space? So you're going to type in mkgopher. Let's see. That'll create a directory for the top level of your Gopher space, and your URL will end up being gopher sdf.org, one, users, and then your username. If you don't create any files or directories, that space will be removed to keep our site clean. And so you're going to need to use links in order, or something similar in order to handle your Gopher, etc., etc. And you can see here, they even recommend that you use Pico, which I find kind of hilarious, to edit your stuff. I'm sure they have access. Let's see if nvim exists. Nvim does not, but if we type vim, vim does exist, and it is asking me for Vundle and a whole bunch of other stuff, which I think is incredibly interesting that they have that. How funny. So it looks like they want you to do plugin install at some point, or you would need to. But that's part of what you got, right? that's how all of this stuff works. I can actually go in and Sdf, and then we can do vim plugin install. You got to go through. Can't process the command line, but that's good to know that that is not working right now. It may end up being a thing that you have to deal with. And go. G. Fill 1. Foreground. H SDF. So there we go. With that said, that's kind of a gentle introduction to SDF. It's very easy to register, very easy to set up your system and to get access to their tools and what is available to you. I think that it is a fantastic tool set, especially for those individuals who may not necessarily have access to the ability to create a Unix system or to load their own Unix system. You can use SDF to get started and start familiarizing yourself with it. Familiarize yourself with the tools. Instead of spending, and I'm just making this as a comment, but instead of spending a couple hours a night playing video games or whatever it is that you might do as a hobby, this is a great opportunity to come in here and at low to no cost, you can start setting up some of these tools like making your own web page so you don't have to use Wix. You can make your own Gopher space. You can connect to their bulletin board. You can start using some of their chat programs, and you can expose yourself to some of the ideas of what it means to use something like the SDF public access Unix system. So thank you for joining me. I really appreciate it. I hope this was useful to you all, and I will see you all later.